the last point on that is 3 years ago, after spending a lot of time building up that firm in New York and some of our other offices, I decided it was time to go back to Africa. And so I moved back to Johannesburg and started off hiring one person in Johannesburg to start Dalberg Africa. I'm happy to say that we now have a team of 30 in Johannesburg, Nairobi, and Dakar, which makes it, frankly, the second largest region within the Dalberg family and the fastest growing one. I'll say a little bit about the African Leadership Institute as well, which I'm also here trying to represent. I believe one of my colleagues from the African Leadership Institute will also be here. And that is an initiative that was formed to bring together young African leaders under the rubric of the Tutu Fellowship, which is something that is sponsored by the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And essentially seeks to bring together young African leaders, provide them with a forum in which to exchange ideas, engage with each other, and so on. I had the good fortune to be selected as one of 20 leaders last year to participate in this program. And it has shaped some of what I will be speaking about today. The topic I was asked to speak about is elite formation, which is a tricky concept. I'm not necessarily very comfortable with the concept of elites as distinct from everyone else. But I think there is something about the experience I've had and what I've seen with the Tutu Fellowship and the other efforts of the Africa Leadership Institute that speaks to what, to a positive translation of what an elite can mean. And really what I'll focus on is the role of young leaders as visible representatives of our communities and societies, and the role that we can play in fostering each other's leadership and growth. I think that very, very often you find that as a young leader or aspiring leader, you are in your little box, your country, your profession, your discipline. And yet you see challenges and issues that may not necessarily directly relate to your specific box, but where you think you can add something, and there's not necessarily a way to engage with that. At the same time, a challenge I've faced is over time, as you strive for excellence, you begin to lose touch with some of the people you came up with and grew with. And you find yourself somewhat lonely. And that access to peers who have also attained excellence, who've also managed to attain positions of responsibility and leadership, is something that becomes very useful and very important. And so, in my mind, I think a critical role that forums like this can play is bringing together people from a range of disciplines and helping us recognize that actually the solution to the challenges of the South don't necessarily lie only in business or only in politics or only in the arts, but in bringing leaders from across those disciplines to really exchange perspectives and look for points of overlap and synergy. In my day-to-day business, a lot of the focus is on bringing together the corporate world and the development world, whether it's governments or development organizations, with investors. And you realize very quickly that there's a lot of people who've built their entire career living in just one of these silos, living in just one of these columns, and saying, you know what, it's all about business, and government is just getting in the way, right? Or here in Africa, business is just exploiting, and there's no way for us to move forward unless government takes the primary role. Or frankly, that government is corrupt and business is greedy, and actually it's all about the NGO and the social activist. That's who is going to transform the continent. What I saw last year with my fellow Tutu fellows, who were drawn from all of these spaces, is that actually unless those three parts of the answer are in the room at the same time and looking for ways to collaborate in interesting ways, you will get nowhere. You cannot get anywhere. And what form does that take? What kind of examples do you see? I think it's everything from pulling together a philanthropist and a corporation to cut the price of malaria drugs and get them to the field as cheaply as possible. I think it's about getting investors to see that the trick or that the challenge of feeding Africa creates huge opportunities, not just for the small-scale farmer to improve the conditions of he and his family, but for the investor to build new and promising businesses that are profitable, but also help turn the last great unexploited potential of the world in the agricultural space. It's those kinds of ideas where I think bringing elites together from different fields, from different countries, and from different generations as well, offers a chance to offer new ways of thinking about things. I think the last thing I would note is the role of peer organizations or peer forums in helping us all resist some of the challenges and temptations that I think the President spoke to in terms of what we face as we grow in our careers as professionals and leaders. Sometimes it's very, very difficult when presented with a tough choice on your own to really understand how to act. I have drawn a lot of comfort over the last year being able to call upon not just the 20 Tutu fellows from my year, but the 100 people who've been through that program to say, you know what, you are all facing similar challenges. I need to be able to look you in the face year after year based on the choices I'm making and not be an embarrassment to you or to myself. What is it, based on all of the debates we had about ethical behavior, what is it, based on all of those discussions we had about the potential to transform Africa, what is the right course of action in this particular situation? Right? That is a dynamic that you won't get from other people from the outside world telling you do this or that. It comes from people who've come from the same place as you, have attained some of the same things, being able to say, you know what, James, I will be embarrassed if you do this or that. Or please make a decision that does not shame or embarrass the rest of us as peers. It's also that group to whom you look and who will look to you and say, you know what, he moved to South Africa and he's doing quite well. Perhaps I should also move from London or New York, not because there's a big call from a large organization, but because I've seen a peer of mine return to the continent and show that it's not a place of challenge and difficulty, but actually a frontier of opportunity, where with a bit of effort, a bit of luck, and some talent, we all can make a huge difference, rather than the small differences that we're able to make in some of the places that we've been able to access. So with that, 2 minutes left? Yes. So with that, that to me is a little bit of the power of peer engagement, right? And so, stepping back, it's always good to really come back to the points that you've made and revisit them a little bit. I think, firstly, is being richly aware, all of us, of all of those networks that have brought us to where we are. In my case, it's the combination of the schooling, the employment history, and the organizations I've been invited to. Secondly, is this realization that excellence in one field sometimes leads us to be blind to the power and the value of other fields. And we should seek out others who've attained the success and attainment in those other fields, not just because it's interesting, but because that is where real value is hidden. It's not hidden in the core of your field. It's hidden on the boundaries, where you overlap your field with another. And seeking out those people is critical. Third is looking for those peer organizations that create that pressure, that healthy pressure, not just to be excellent, but to be moral and ethical. And finally, it's looking around and asking yourself, how can you be a positive role model for those around you? And how